All right. We'll talk about operating procedures. And I'm recording. Uh, Normally, when you get your technician license, you're going to be pretty much limited to being or to using a handy talkie on VHF and UHF. Uh, they have a limited range, which is essentially line of sight or slightly over the horizon. There's a little bit of a over the horizon effect more on VHF than UHF. So you can get about 15% farther than the actual visual horizon. I think we talked about that before. In order to get longer distances, because in the normal line of sight, you're looking at a couple miles between you and the horizon. So 2 stations, you might get 4 miles, possibly 5, if you're lucky. Kind of depends how tall you are or whether you're on a high point of ground. So to get any kind of distance, we need to use a repeater, which will retransmit the signal. And typically they're set on high towers, top of high buildings. The one at the Space Center is on top of the VAB, so it's 525 feet up. It's got probably a 35-mile radius, so it covers a large portion of the county.
Is that the one they call Kennedy?
K1 or N1 KSC.
I got named it Kennedy.
Okay.
They do the space.
444.925.
That's the one that does the space launch.
They rebroadcast on that, yeah. In addition to repeaters, there's also what they call auxiliary stations and space stations, which is not necessarily the space station. If it's a satellite above 50 kilometers, it's called a space station. And there's certain rules regarding contact with a space station as opposed to a ground station.
About 50 kilometers?
50 kilometers.
It's in the Kármán line.
Huh?
Never mind.
Well, I didn't set it.
Yeah,
That's
fair
just
enough.
that's the definition of a space station. If it's more than 50 kilometers, so if it's 49, I'm not sure what you call it.
Yeah.
Falling space station. Um, but again, even the repeaters are limited to basically line of sight. So that's why they tend to be up on towers or top of high buildings, hospitals, things like that.
I guess you could have a full range, 50 kilometers.
Oh, yeah. My balloon got up to 28,000 feet before it disappeared. And the current ones are running 45 to 50,000 feet. What type of amateur station simultaneously retransmits the signal of another amateur station on a different channel or channels? A repeater. What types of amateur stations can automatically retransmit signals of other amateur stations?
Bravo.
Did you read them
looks
all?
good. Earth. There's all.
Earth repeater. No.
Yeah.
Alpha. Alpha.
Now, did we talk about beacons? Because remember, a beacon just broadcasts.
Yep.
It's there to check propagation and things like that.
I don't remember. Did we talk about?
Not much.
Okay.
Charlie.
What is an auxiliary? I guess it's a station you can set up under your same call sign with a designator like /1 or something to act as kind of like a repeater. I honestly have never dealt with an auxiliary station other than for the exam. The answer is Delta. So
That's what I said.
that's one way to remember it. It's got the auxiliary in there. And not a beacon. I think we talked about linking repeaters before, and one example or locally is SARNet, where they're interconnected, I believe, with microwave signals. And they go basically the length of the state along the two major north-south expressways. But they work like a normal repeater. They will repeat, okay, the signal they receive, but all of the repeaters that are linked together repeat it instead of just having one. So if you are on SARNet talking to a local one over in Cocoa, okay, everybody in the state basically can hear you that's listening to one of the SARNet repeaters. And there's also, and we talked a little bit about the digital voice, which is DMR, D-Star, and Fusion. And they basically are linked together through the internet. So if the internet goes down, then none of those digital voice repeaters will work other than local. They'll still act as a local repeater. So if somebody else has a DMR radio, and there are a couple DMR repeaters around here, you can talk to other people through that repeater, just not necessarily through the internet. Depends on whether they have the gateway connection or not. Which of the following describes a linked repeater network?
Yeah.
Alpha sounds good. In order to use a repeater, you have to properly program your radio. You can either do it manually from the buttons on the front panel, which is tedious, or you can use some programming software. There's a free one called Chirp that supports a lot of the radios. Some of the radios manufacturers will have programming software you can download. And then there's people like RT Systems that sell programming software for most of the radios. Theirs is probably better than the rest, but they're $30, $35 for the programming package. You get what you pay for. Since repeaters will receive on one frequency, transmit on another, we call that offset. So that's one of the things you have to program in. And the offset for VHF is typically plus or minus 600 kilohertz. For UHF, it's plus or minus 5 megahertz. So depending on which band, you either put in a plus or minus 600 kilohertz or 5 megahertz as the offset. And sometimes it shows up on the radio if you've got a display as dupe. It's kind of short for duplex because you're actually full duplex. You're transmitting and receiving at the same time, just on two different frequencies. What is a common repeater frequency offset in the 2-meter band?
Wow. Charlie. 500.
Alpha,
Well, let's see, we got an Alpha, a Charlie, and a Bravo. One of those is right.
2 meter band's Bravo.
Right. What's a common repeater frequency offset in the 70 centimeter band? That's UHF. Alpha. Okay. You can have repeater interference. They try to set up repeater frequencies so that nobody in the local area is on the same frequency. No other repeaters. But due to propagation and other things, we occasionally have interference on the NASA Club repeater from Jacksonville. There's a repeater up there on the same frequency. That's pretty far away. It's well beyond line of sight. So there is propagation sometimes. And in fact, I remember the first time we did the 10-mile run at the Space Force Center, I was hearing people up in close to Daytona picking them up on the repeater. One of the methods used to kind of prevent that or mitigate it, I guess is a better word, is called the squelch system. CTCSS stands for Continuous Tone Coded Squelch System. And it's really an access code. It's a subaudible frequency in that 67 to 257 hertz. And there's specific ones. There's a list of them. And each repeater, if they enable that, will have one of those tones. The N1KSC repeater is, I think, 131.8. You know what the Indian River one is?
Not off the top of my head. Talking about the 3.7?
Yeah.
Not off the top of my head.
Anyway, that's another thing that you have to program in your radio. And in most repeaters will have a tone set.
156.7.
Okay. And they're at specific frequencies in that range. So it's one of the things you have to look up either in the repeater book, which you can download, or you can a lot of times find information on the web on a specific repeater. I'd say a lot of them have websites of their own, whatever club is usually sponsoring that repeater.
So what's the difference here? You got CTCSS and you got the DCS.
Okay.
And I've noticed that when I was programming my radio, some on most of your ham, you got a SQL or something like that instead of the CTCSS or the DCS. It's different.
Okay. Digital code squelch is what shows up when you have a digital voice transceiver.
Now this is
a D-Star DMR. Okay. It's called digital squelch or DCS.
I should have wrote that down.
Analog, okay, is the CTCSS. And a lot of times it's referred to as a PL tone.
Right.
Not sure what PL stands for, but usually you'll see it PL tone because it's easier than saying CTCSS. But it's just access code.
Yeah, most of what I do on what I've got here is the CTCSS.
Right.
I'm not seeing any of them with the DCS yet.
Right.
But I did notice that when I was programming the radio, when I pulled up,
You don't have a digital voice transceiver.
I can't remember what the abbreviations were on that though. It was different than these.
Okay. I don't know what that one is.
I'll have to look it up. I'll write it down next time. I was looking at that and I was wondering what the difference was.
And then the other one that we mentioned, I think, when we talked about DMR, remember color code,
You know?
which is another access code that DMR uses
Right.
instead of the CTCSS or DCS.
Is the 67 to 257 hertz, is that the actual like audio tone? Like,
Mhm.
that's not, it's not
It's-
transmitting that, it's
Yes, it
Yes,
does.
is.
like it's I'm saying like it's not transmitting.
It's called subaudible,
hertz.
audible, because most people can't hear it. But it's transmitted along with whenever you key your mic. Okay, it's sending whatever tone you have programmed. And the repeater is listening for that tone. Okay, and if it doesn't get
Right.
that tone, you're not gonna,
That's the actual audio frequency though, not the transmit frequency.
it's an audio tone along with your voice that you don't hear unless you've got very, very good hearing. I don't hear it anymore. Not, well, I guess at one time I would have been able to hear 200 hertz. What term describes the use of a subaudible tone transmitted along with normal voice audio to open the squelch of a receiver?
Delta.
Alpha.
What did you say?
Said alpha.
No.
No. No. Okay. Charlie.
No, that's dual tone multi-frequency, which is what keypads use on telephones and things.
Oh, okay.
I'll try again.
Delta. Delta.
Delta. Which of the following could be the reason you are unable to access a repeater that you can hear?
Delta.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. If you're having trouble, one of the things you can do is check the input signal. And in some cases, you have a reverse function where you can actually listen to the input frequency of the repeater. So you can tell what signal you're putting out. If you're getting the distorted transmissions, it's probably because you're just speaking either too loud or you're too close to the microphone. We have a guy on, which net is it? Maybe it's the Thursday night. There's one guy always, I don't know if it's his system or whatever, but it sounds like he's got the microphone right here and it's really hard to understand.
When is this?
It's either the Wednesday or Thursday night net, same guy all the time.
I think it's Thursday night net because I was listening to them. I know what you're talking about. You couldn't understand. That's what I was saying. Some of these guys, you can't understand what they're saying.
And also have dudes who just whispering into it, just like,
Yeah,
drives me nuts.
talking too softly is a problem too.
Yeah.
How is a VHF UHF repeater's reverse function used? Charlie. Listen on the input instead of the output. What would cause your FM transmission audio to be distorted on voice peaks?
Charlie.
And that's how you can kind of tell it's that because, you know, you'll be able to, the voice will be clear until it gets loud enough and then it clips and it's all distorted. Okay, when you're using a repeater, the protocol is you're supposed to give your call sign and follow it by saying that you're monitoring or listening on that channel.
So that's your QC, right? Good man.
Equivalent to a CQ,
CQ.
right? You don't call CQ on a repeater. It's just, you just say, because it's a little different. I mean, they're fixed frequencies and other people are listening on that frequency, so you're not having to broadcast calling any station, which is what CQ is. If you get a reply, okay, then you say the call sign of the contact followed by your call sign.
So he'll know you're talking back to him.
Right. So when you're advertising that you're out there listening for somebody, you just give your call sign and say you're listening. If you know a specific person that might be listening, like if I wanted to contact Dan, I'd say K4XLG, this is W3RDL. And if he was listening, he'd come back with W3RDL, this is, go on from there.
Or I could revert back to CB radio days and say, go for K4XLG.
Yeah, everybody has their own little twist on how they do things, but basically that's the thing. You say that you give your call sign, say you're listening. You give the other call sign to recognize the person that you're contacting or contacted you, followed by who you are.
This is me. So the first one, that's how you would typically come up on
Yes.
for a repeater.
And well, and now if it's a net, the way it usually works is the net control operator will give a spiel about, taking the repeater offline or out of general use, and it's for particular club net, whatever, and then call for check-ins. And they'll usually do check-ins by your call sign suffix. So they'll ask for call signs between alpha and golf. So and then people will check in saying this is so and so, okay, and net control keeps a little log of who's checked in. And one of the things you're supposed to do is you key the mic and say this is, unkey the mic for a second or two to see if anybody else happened to do it at the same time, because you'll double. So it may not, neither one of you may get in, and then finish with this is. And then once everybody, and then they go through like hotel to mic, or usually break it up in 3 or 4 segments.
Yeah.
After everybody has checked in, then if the net control has some information, topic, whatever, and also when you check in, you're supposed to say whether you have any traffic. So if you said you had traffic, net control will come back to the people in order what their traffic was. And this is coming up on a couple more slides about traffic handling and stuff. No, that's fine. I mean,
I'm used to calling like anything like that, because that's all.
used to what?
Like I'm used to referring to like any frequency as like a net, because that's
Okay.
yeah. But you would
Nets are specific
specific
events.
attention. Okay.
Right.
So normally, if it was just a repeater, you just say that you're monitoring.
Right.
Gotcha.
And around here, you say that and you don't get an answer. Not much activity on the repeaters.
People complain about not getting, not hearing anything on UHF or VHF. And I've been listening to, since I drive 18 miles south and 18 miles back north, every weekday for work, I've been listening to 146.52, and I actually got a contact on there
Really?
on Tuesday coming home from work.
Which one's 5.2? Is that SARNet?
No, 146.52 is the national calling frequency.
Oh.
Meters.
Okay,
And Danny Bird monitors that frequency all the time, and I heard him talking to somebody else, and afterwards I chimed in and introduced myself to him.
okay. So what's an appropriate way to call another station on a repeater if you know the other station's call sign?
Bravo.
Bravo.
Okay. Which of the following indicates that a station is listening on a repeater and looking for a contact? Okay. When we talk, and I mentioned duplex, and like I said, a lot of the radios, if they have a display, when you're usually in a memory setting for a repeater, will show DUP for duplex because you're doing an offset.
Mine just says plus or minus.
Okay. When you're in simplex mode, where you're not talking to a repeater, you're just talking to another person, you're both on the same frequency. That's simplex mode. Or we used to call it half duplex because you can't both talk at the same time.
We would usually only do duplex for like SATCOM or aircraft.
There's a set of channels that are set up for the simplex operation. So if you're within range of somebody and you don't need to use the repeater, even though you may contact them on the repeater, you may want to do a QSY, which is coming up, to one of the tactical channels. There's two nationwide simplex calling channels, the 146.520 for 2 meters and the 446.0 for 70 centimeters. Those are nationwide recognized. So wherever you are in the country, you can use that simplex calling channel, see if there's anybody there without using a repeater. There's additional channels to find they call tactical, and I don't remember how many there are, maybe 6. It's a number of them that are specific frequencies. So if you contact somebody on one of the standard calling channels, it's, unless you're going to have something very quick, it's going to be a long conversation. You're supposed to switch to one of the tactical channels. What term describes an amateur station that is transmitting and receiving on the same frequency?
Charlie.
Why are simplex channels designated in the VHF UHF band plans?
Alpha.
What is the national calling frequency for FM simplex operations in the 2-meter band?
Alpha.
Boy, you're on fire.
Been using them flashcards.
I need to get some of the flashcards.
Where'd you get your flashcards?
It was on exam.org.
Oh, okay. I think ARL sells them. But
Yeah, that website's got it. You can go to flashcards, or you can go to the what you're showing here type stuff.
okay.
I've been doing the flashcards, and then after I do the flash, it just keeps going and going and going. But I'll do that for a while, then I'll go take a test. See how I do on the test.
Okay. You're doing the test on the all 35? Because in some of them, they'll let you just do specific groups.
Well, what this does, it evaluates, you can go to statistics after you do that, and it'll give you graphs of what you're lacking on, what you're doing good on, what you need to study and what. So,
Okay, good.
yeah. I find it pretty interesting, and it's easy to use, and it keeps up what you're doing. It tells you how many tests you took, what your average is. So I hadn't checked the other ones out. This is the only one that I've been on, but.
Yeah.
So, but, I like that because I can go over here and click on the, flashcards. And it starts giving you questions, and it just keep, and down at the bottom, it'll ask you a question. You answer that question, and it'll put it down at the bottom with the correct answer on there. When your next question's at the top. So it does pretty good. I
Good.
like that. It's easy to use.
Okay. Okay, so what's the takeaway? Repeaters, auxiliary, and space stations can automatically retransmit on another channel. So they actually run what we call full duplex or duplex mode. They can be linked like SARnet, or in the case of the digital voice repeaters through the internet. There's standard offset frequencies for 2 meters and 70 centimeters. It's plus or minus 600 kilohertz on VHF, which is the 2 meter band, and 5 megahertz on UHF, or the 70 centimeter band. And the other UHF, the 23 centimeters, we looked up in, what is it, 12 or 15, right? The offset
On which band?
on 23 centimeters. It was somewhere in the 12, 15.
12 or 20, I think. Is what
Okay.
it said. So it's got
That's
more
not a
than one offset.
question on the test, just they go up in frequency.
And the 1.25 meter, the 220 band is 1.2 megahertz, I think.
Okay. I'd say probably most repeaters use the CTCSS or PL tone to allow access into the repeater, basically to prevent interference from other repeaters or stations on the same frequency that aren't supposed to be close enough that you hear them, but sometimes you do. If you can't connect, you could have the wrong offset, you could have the wrong tone, either digital or analog.
So for space stations, so there's ham satellites that just act as normal,
Mhm.
like they just act the same as your normal
Right.
computers. And you
Right.
just need to.
Except they kind of pass over, so you know, it has to be a store and forward in most cases, because you don't see them but for a few minutes. Unless it was geostationary, and I don't know that there's any amateur geostationaries.
Geostationaries?
There might be, I don't know.
I'd be surprised.
To troubleshoot a repeater, you can use the reverse function where you can listen on the repeater's receive frequency. And also, if somebody's coming through very distorted on voice peaks, they're probably talking too loudly, so you could maybe tell them to hold the mic a little bit farther away in a nice way.
Get that megaphone away from the mic.
To make a repeater contact, okay, you say the station you want to call sign followed by your call sign. If you just want to effectively do a CQ, you do your call sign and say you're listening or monitoring. If you're doing simplex without a repeater, going directly both on the same channel, you can use one of the national calling frequencies and then go to a tactical channel so that you're not tying up a repeater if you're able to actually talk to somebody within a few miles where you don't need the repeater. Any questions on that one?